Today, Voices from Oxford is talking to Tom Hockaday, who is head of Isis Innovation. You know, many people's perception of a university, and particularly a university like Oxford University, with all of its beautiful towers and buildings and gardens, is that it is a kind of ivory tower, not concerned with what is happening in the real world. Nothing could be further from the truth. And we're going to discover that today in talking with Tom Hockaday, because Isis Innovation is one of the most successful exploitation arms of a university in certainly the United Kingdom, possibly in the whole of Europe. And we will discover that as we talk with Tom. So, Tom, just to introduce Isis Innovation, how did it get started and how did the university get into the business, because it is business, isn't it?
It is a business.
Of taking university ideas and inventions and helping academics to get them to market.
You're right, Dennis, it is a business. Isis Innovation Ltd was set up by the university in 1987. So quite a long time ago.
Quite a time ago, yes.
And the first company was set up in 1987 with a different name. It actually changed its name to Isis Innovation in 1988. And one has to cast one's mind back to what was going on in that period. And the universities were in a different place, and the world was a different place. And what had actually happened in a couple of years before that, there had been a change in government legislation.
Yes.
So the government had changed its approach from wanting a central agency, in effect, the British Technology Group, which was based in London, to commercialise outputs of UK universities, to allowing universities to do it themselves.
To do it yourself, yes.
So Oxford's response to that change in legislation was to set up Isis Innovation as the technology transfer company of the University of Oxford.
How would you rate its success? I mean, have you got figures that you can quote? How would you say to the world, we're doing the job we were set out to do?
I think that there are many ways of measuring our activity and our outputs and our success. I think the real key lies in the fact that we are a technology transfer company. So are we transferring technology? So I think the really important thing is the extent to which we're helping ideas that come out of the labs of the University of Oxford get transferred into business, get investment, get developed, and become new products and services that make the world a better place. And of course there's the money as well, and there's the jobs and all of that, but really I think it's about working with researchers at the university when they're interested in commercialization, helping them to go through all of the various stages and steps which require expertise and require money and investment to get these ideas developed so the world is a better place.
And does it make money?
So Isis is successful both financially and in terms of transferring technologies which get invested. So for example, in the year ending March 2011, our most recent financial year, our total income to Isis was £8.4 million.
8.4 million.
And then 4.8 of which we transfer back to the university.
Right, got you. So it is actually succeeding in making money for the university, in addition to enabling inventors and innovators in the university to contact those who would help them to commercialise what they're doing. That's
absolutely
the way to sum it up.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So how do you go about identifying innovation that's worth exploiting, a great innovation, if you like?
Well, our whole approach is to position ourselves as being available to researchers and helping researchers who want help to commercialise the results of their research. So we do a lot of what we call internal marketing. We try and make our presence felt within the university. We talk to as many people as we can. But we actually wait for researchers to come to us and say, I think I've got a good idea. I'm interested in commercialisation. And the reason we do that, and the reason that's so important, is that that shows that the researchers involved are actually going to want to get engaged in this. And it's not for everybody by any means,
No.
but for many researchers in Oxford, they do want to get involved in
Yes.
those activities.
Yes. So you would say that, as I said in the introduction, that contrary to the possibly general perception of a university like Oxford, that it is, as it were, looking largely to itself and being concerned with academic success, which of course it is, that it is actually the case that people are interested in exploiting what they discover.
Oh, absolutely, without doubt. I mean, last year we had 300 new disclosures, as we call them.
Right.
You know, when a researcher comes to us, maybe
Yes.
for the first time, or maybe somebody we've worked with for a long time, they come to us and they say, I think I've had a bright idea, or they, you know, they don't really
Right.
put it like that, obviously.
Yes.
But they've got some interesting research results, they
Yes.
think there's some commercial potential, and we start working with them.
What sort of fields do the innovations tend to occur in? Are there, as it were, hot spots within the university of exploitable innovation, or is it just across the whole board?
That's a very interesting one. I mean, it tends to change over time, but I mean, our approach is to offer you know, the service and the support across the board,
Yes.
and then see who
Sure.
comes forward. So, you know, as you might expect, we do a lot of work with people in the chemistry department.
I
and
can imagine that,
engineering
yes.
science.
That has
and-
been a
and
very,
materials.
very innovation and exploitative department for a
yeah.
long time, hasn't it?
So,
Yes.
so you know, we get lots of ideas, and we're working with lots of researchers from the areas you would expect, but then also from some you might not expect. So
Yes.
we've done a lot of work with the zoology department, for
Right.
example, which you might
Yes.
not necessarily expect.
Yes.
But and for us, what that tells us is you never really know where there will be a researcher interested in commercialisation doing
Right.
something that they
Indeed.
want to take
Yes.
forward.
So one has to spread the net wide.
Yes.
But what you find as a result of people coming to you is that certain areas tend to be productive in that
Yeah.
sense, possibly because that's their history. That
Yes.
it isn't just, as it were, that the other areas aren't so exploitable. It is that that group of people, that takes the chemists as an example, are used to talking to each other about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that leads me to another kind of question, which is that some people in a university would be a little bit uncertain about the idea of exploitation, either because they are, as it were, temperamentally not sure that they want that to be the way in which their work is handled, and they may also be a little bit frightened of what you've got to do. And what do you say to such people? How do you, as it were, get over the barrier of somebody saying, I don't know that I want to be dealing with venture capitalists, with bankers, and occupying most of my mind all the time with how is the company doing? I want to do my research. How do you talk to that kind of person?
Well, I think it's worth stepping back and thinking about what universities are really for.
Yes.
And I think for me it's very clear, universities are really all about teaching and research.
Indeed, yes.
And of course everybody involved in research wants to make sure that the results of their research are made available and are of
Yes.
use.
Yes.
And I think where we come in is that sometimes the results of research are only able to be taken forward and developed with commercial and business investment.
Yes.
And it's really just to make the point that this is not for everybody by any
No,
means, and it
exactly.
is perfectly legitimate for somebody in the university to say no thank you.
To say what I've just said,
Yeah,
I'm not sure about
I don't.
this.
Yes, or even
Yes.
stronger than that.
Exactly so,
I am
yes.
sure, and I don't want to do it.
Yes,
I
right.
think that's perfectly legitimate.
Sure.
Where there are people who are interested, but as you say, are not sure about it, then
Yes.
I think where we step in is we can provide a lot of experience and help
Right.
and support and
Yes.
explain what
Yes.
we think is likely to happen.
Yes.
And again, if at any stage through the process the researcher says, "Okay, look, I'm not sure I want to do this," we say,
Yeah.
"Look, that's fine."
Exactly so,
Because
yeah.
for us, the last thing we want to do is to sort of force upon an
Yes.
individual or the institution going down a path that it might not want to go down.
Well, that wouldn't work anyway, because if you're going to exploit an innovation, as I know from my own experience too, of talking with companies and others who want to use the kind of work I do, you have to be convincing.
Yeah.
And you have to have it in you that you want it to happen.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, you're not going to succeed. So, as you're saying, Tom, if you find somebody very resistant to the idea, best to say, okay, this is not for you.
Yeah, indeed. And another point on that, I think, which is worth making, is that it's not as a case of the researcher tells us something, we patent it, we sell it.
Yeah.
It's all about business relationships.
Yes.
And so very often the commercial party, whether it's an existing company or investors, obviously they want a relationship with the researchers, with the scientists, with the inventors. So we have to make sure that they're willing to carry on putting their time into it.
So you have then to relate with a lot of external bodies then, investors, business angels, venture capitalists, banks, and so on, and the sort of people who could be executives if a company is formed, and not necessarily the innovator, in fact often not the innovator. So you must be networking out to those too, the banks, the providers of money. Can you say a little bit about how ISIS does that? Does it have a big network?
I mean, networking, as it's currently called, and I guess I'm not sure what it was called before that word came up, is a very, very important part of what we do. I mean, at its most general, there are two successful routes to market for us. We might be licensing the technology to an existing company of any size,
indeed.
shape,
That's
anywhere
perfectly
in
possible.
the world.
You don't have always to form a new company.
So we need a network
Indeed.
of the existing companies.
Sure.
But then, yes, sometimes we are setting up a new business, and so we need a different type of network for that. So we have two sort of organised formal networks, as well as a sort of mass of informal relationships. So we have run since 1990 an organisation called the Oxford Innovation Society, and that is a fabulous, what you would now call an open innovation network.
And venture capitalists, bankers and others can be members of that.
Absolutely right. So that has a number of member organisations who come from existing companies all over the world, and investors and government agencies who are interested in it, the professions, patent attorneys, lawyers, bankers, all of these people who are interested in innovation in Oxford. And then specifically for the spin-out company formation and finding investment, we have the Isis Angels Network, which is a network of potential investors in the very first round of these early companies, typically say £0.5 to £1 million, typically coming from private business angel investors.
Indeed, so, yes, which is what a business angel is usually defined as, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Yes.
I mean, I sometimes say it's code for rich people.
Rich people who've got some money to burn.
Rich people who've got some experience as well in early stage technology companies. So, every now and then we will hold an event where we're presenting a number of potential investment opportunities in early stage companies to a room full of investors, and that's the way we manage that. But so as well as those two formal networks, it's constantly about learning who the innovative companies are, who the innovative investors are, and then finding people who are interested in running those early companies if that's the way we go.
So Isis Innovation can, as it were, be the process by which the right people from the innovative side and the exploitation side make contact.
Yes.
That's interesting. Now, I want to take a different kind of question now, Tom, which is that it's often said by people within the commercial world, within politics too, that there is a sense in which there's something wrong with British universities in this regard, because there is Silicon Valley in the United States, there are hotspots elsewhere in the world like Singapore where huge innovation is occurring, and we are thought sometimes to be lagging way behind in that kind of mentality, if I can put it that way, or in managing to get the critical mass necessary for that sort of hotspot activity to occur. Do you agree with that, or do you think we are beginning to show that that's not correct?
I think there are a lot of separate aspects in the what you've just said. I think, generally speaking, British universities are incredibly good at presenting potential commercial opportunities to the business world, the investment world, the industrial world. I think it is also true that there is nowhere like Silicon Valley in the United Kingdom.
Right.
And so one needs to begin to sort of unpack some of these things. And the UK research base, essentially the university research base, is very, very strong, is world class in many, many areas. The UK sort of technology transfer capability is really pretty good. And
Right.
certainly in the time I've been involved in this over the last 20 years, I've seen a real shift from us spending all of our time trying to learn how to do it from the US,
Right.
to actually some fairly serious US institutions
Yes.
coming over here and trying to find out how we're developing things in the UK and in Europe, because we are
Yes.
doing it differently and very successfully.
Right.
One then has to think about the absorptive capacity of the local, regional, national, international economies that we're trying to transfer technologies into. And that's when I think it begins to get very interesting, because, the UK is not, world leading anymore.
Yes.
In terms of its potential to take forward new technologies and grow them into really large companies.
Right.
I think we're very good at setting up new early stage companies and developing those and growing those, but then something seems to happen.
Yes.
Something seems to happen in terms of they get bought out,
Yes.
potentially by
Gobbled
a
up
European
at a
firm
stage.
or a US
Yes.
firm. So we're
Yes.
very, very good. I mean, we're amongst the best in the world at a lot of this,
Yes.
but not necessarily all of it. Is
Now,
what I would say.
that is a
in
very
terms of-
interesting remark, because that somehow implies that the problem lies more with the later stage business process than with the innovative and early stage development process. Would you agree with that?
I do. I think
Yes.
that is a key point, and I think that, in a way, if one wants to look at it from the aspect of the UK economy and the challenges
Yes.
the UK economy faces, I think it would be sensible for those who are interested in this to shift the spotlight away from setting up new companies,
Yes.
which is actually something we're very good at.
Yes. Right.
To how do you turn a small company into a big
Into
company?
how do you grow a
Yeah.
company into global scale
Yeah.
work? Yes, exactly.
And have it
Yes.
stay in the UK.
Yes. Do you look to those kinds of companies that have succeeded in doing that in either the United States, East Asia? What about the Korean chaebol, for example? I mean, these are companies that started from what? Just selling rice to becoming global companies. Do you look to those kinds of companies and ask, how did that happen? And how could it happen here in the United Kingdom?
I guess I'm a bit more limited in my
Of course you are,
ambitions.
but yes.
No, I mean, I think the focus for ISIS, and this is important, is that we're owned by the university, we're part of the university. Our part in this huge, great innovation ecosystem, as it's termed, is to help transfer the ideas out into business. Business itself then needs to take them forward. So our heartland is encouraging researchers to get involved in this activity, packaging the ideas up.
Yes.
Very often involving patenting, but not always copyright. But providing
Indeed,
some
yes.
packaging,
Yeah.
so we can shift from a research output to a packaged offering to
Yes.
industry.
Yes.
And a lot of it is about this sort of
Yes.
translation and
Indeed,
transfer,
yes,
and
sure.
taking something from the language of university research and presenting it in the language of business.
I referred, Tom, to Silicon Valley as one obvious example, the example people often quote as a hotbed of innovation. I referred also to emerging parts of East Asia like Singapore, Hong Kong, elsewhere. Does Isis Innovation reach out internationally?
So our business has got more and more international as the years have gone on. George Bush is known for many things, but one of them is his turn of phrase, and one of his phrases was the world is getting more global. And whilst absurd, one can understand
Yes,
roughly what
sure.
he was talking about. And so our activities have become more and more international, such that 2 years ago now we set up a subsidiary office in Hong Kong. So
Right.
there is now an ISIS team in Hong Kong, and that's doing a number of things. it's providing a platform for us in that region so that we can develop our networks there, meet investors, meet innovative companies.
Right.
And we can promote Oxford technologies into that region through that office. And we can find investors and licensee companies who want to take forward Oxford technologies. So we've already had some very good examples of Chinese investors investing into UK startup companies as a result of us having developed that activity. And personally, I can only see that growing. And another aspect of our business in Isis is we're increasingly working to help other people in other parts of the world develop their technology transfer activities. So we're doing that in Asia as well.
Well, that's very interesting. So there is a completely international aspect to Isis Innovation, which you see developing further in the future.
Yes, indeed.
Right. So, in one sense, if an American or a Chinese or a Korean company buys the product, in the sense that once an innovation has led to the formation of a relatively small company, and if that produces good returns both to the innovator, to the university, in a sense you've done your job.
In a sense, yes, and I also think there are longer term and broader benefits to the UK when that happens, because it continues to develop and build on the UK's reputation as a great source of really innovative ideas.
Right.
And as the global economy is obviously changing, it's increasingly important for the UK to maintain its lead as a knowledge-based economy.
Right.
So if our reputation as a source of great ideas and early stage companies continues, actually I think that's a good thing, because I think it continues to reinforce the UK as a key focus of the knowledge-based economy.
So you're going to find the next question I've got a little bit difficult to answer, because it'll depend on what is meant by an Isis Innovation formed company, because companies can get bought and move on. But if you were asked the question, what are the examples of, as it were, the biggest successes in terms of growing a big company, what would you say?
So in terms of classic measures of company growth, market capitalization, etc., one is steered towards a certain answer. If you're looking for potential and excitement and impact in human terms, you might end up in a different place.
Indeed so, yes,
sure. I mean, in terms of creating market value, a company called Powderject was set up based upon Oxford University research.
This is the idea of being able to inject drugs.
That's right, the needleless injection
right.
technology, which developed as a company, became a vaccines development company, and was eventually bought for over £500 million.
Yes.
So that scores in a number of different ways in terms of technology development, in terms of healthcare benefits, and regular economic measures. You then look at some of the other things, and one of the most exciting projects we've worked on in recent years is a tuberculosis vaccine that is in development. So it's in phase 2 clinical trials, and Oxford researchers have developed the world's leading TB vaccine candidate. If successful, that of course is going to have an enormous
huge
impact in terms of global health, and potentially make some money as well.
So this, as it were, could be the modern equivalent of a story that is often thrown back at Oxford University, which is that we first used antibiotics to treat people highly successfully during the war, during the Second World War, and we didn't exploit it. And so what you're saying is there are such developments that could have huge human health benefits, which the university, through Isis Innovation, is now looking at very carefully.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Now, I've got two final questions for you, Tom. One was suggested by the other person who was going to be here to interview you, which is, if you were to try to rate the United Kingdom in terms of being an innovative environment on a 1 to 10 scale, would you refuse to do that? Or would you welcome it and say, yes, I know the answer?
I think it's an entirely unfair question.
I'm sure that's the case.
But it's always nice to have a go at an answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, overall, I'd probably give it a 5 or 6, possibly a 7.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I think what that's all about, it is a fantastic place to take ideas out of a world-class research base,
Yes.
see them as commercial opportunities, set up new companies or connect with other innovative
Yes.
companies and start going forward in that way. And there are many aspects of the the sort of legislative environment and the business environment here which are absolutely superb, and
Yes.
quite a lot of the government schemes in terms of some of the tax breaks and tax schemes are actually well intentioned in terms of providing opportunities for innovation in the UK. Yet we're not quite as successful as some other places in the world. So
Yes.
it's still very much worth us looking elsewhere and trying to pick up the tricks from around
Ideas
the
and
world.
tricks.
Yeah.
Or possibly also that some of the viewers of this programme who are concerned with later stage development of companies, later stage exploitation of innovation, should take the message and perhaps take a more serious interest in the innovative base that is occurring in the United Kingdom, in Oxford in particular, and look for ways in which that can be grown into much more successful companies. So there's a sense in which your rating of, 5, 6, 7, could be made 8, 9, 10 if the people who know how to grow companies took a real interest and joined, what did you call it, the Isis?
Well, there's the Isis Angels Network
That's
and
right.
the Oxford Innovation Society.
And the Oxford Innovation
Yeah.
Society, yes. Well, that's, I think, the take-home message for some of the viewers of this programme. But I've got a final question for you, Tom. You're obviously an extremely busy person, a very successful person in running Isis Innovation. How do you switch off? How do you relax? How do you, as we're at the end of the day when all of this, as it were, has to be put behind you and in your office, what do you then do?
I drive 20 miles home. And
Right.
I think actually that makes quite a difference.
Yes.
In most of the jobs I've had, there's been a physical distance between the
right.
office and
Yes.
home. Now,
Yes.
whether that was in London and it was a sort of 30 or 40-minute tube ride,
Yes.
with your face pressed up against somebody else's newspaper,
Yeah.
or here where, yes, I mean, we live about 20 miles north of Oxford, so I have a sort of decompression
Indeed, yes.
chamber,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is that
Right.
journey home. So by the time I've got home, I've generally got over whatever the stresses
Indeed,
of the day
yes.
might be. And I walk and I run and I
Yes.
do these things.
Yes. And as you, it's a driving home, is it? Yes. Do you listen to Radio 4, to classical music, to pop music? What do
I
you then
tend,
do?
in the morning, I tend to listen to Radio 4,
Yes.
so that by the time I get into work, I can
You
usually recite
got
the
news,
headlines.
yes. Right.
Going home, I usually listen to music, and it
Yes.
tends to be modern music.
Yes,
In fact. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Good. Well, Tom Hockaday, thank you very much for talking to Voices from Oxford. We've greatly enjoyed your insights and showing to the world what Oxford University is doing in the exploitation area. Thank you very much.
Thank you.